Champion Vextorther wore 300,000 credit battle armor, but the human instructor destroyed it with a single tap. I need to be honest with you right from the start. I, Vexer of the crime, holder of 17 campaign ribbons, survivor of the Bleeding Moon's conflict, decorated 6 times for valor in close combat, was an idiot, a complete certified galaxy class, but in my defense, how was I supposed to know? The training facility on Station Helios 9 smelled like recycled air in desperation, which should have been my first clue that something was off. But no, I walked in there with my crest held high, my scales gleaming under the fluorescent lighting, convinced that I was about to teach these soft-kinned newcomers a thing or two about real combat. "You must be Vex," the boar, the human said, not even bothering to look up from her data pad. She was small, maybe 5'12" FT tall, with dark hair pulled back in what I later learned was called a ponytail. Her species had only joined the Galactic Council 3 cycles ago, and already they thought they could teach combat tactics. "Please, Lieutenant Iris Calloway," she continued, finally glancing at me with these unnervingly calm brown eyes. "I will be your combat instructor for this rotation." I laughed, actually laughed, right in her face. My mandibles clicked with amusement, and I saw several other trainees. A Veil, 2 Horians, and a Skellig exchanged glances. They were thinking the same thing I was. This creature barely reaching my chest plates was going to instruct me. Me, I had fought in 12 major engagements. I had personally defeated a Targon Dreadnought champion in ritual combat. This was insulting. "With respect, Lieutenant," I said, not respectfully at all. "I think there has been some mistake. I am here for advanced combat training." Not I gestured vaguely at her. Whatever this is, she did not react the way I expected. No anger, no defensive posturing, nothing. She just smiled. This tiny little curve of her lips that somehow made the temperature in the room feel like it dropped 5 degrees. "No mistake, Champion Vexther," she replied, emphasizing my title in a way that made it sound almost mocking. "You requested the best hand-to-hand combat specialist on the station. That would be me. Unless, of course, you would like to file a transfer request. I can have the paperwork ready and about." She checked her data pad again. 10 minutes. The other trainees were watching now, really watching. I could feel their eyes on measuring, judging. My pride, that wonderful, terrible thing, reared up inside my chest. A CR warrior does not back down, especially not from something that looked like it could barely lift a standard issue rifle. "No transfer necessary," I said, drawing myself up to my full 7T height. "I simply want to ensure that council resources are not being wasted on." I paused for effect in adequate instruction. "Oh, do not worry about that," Iris said, setting down her data pad and walking toward the center of the training mat. Her movements were loose, casual, like someone taking a stroll through a park rather than preparing for combat assessment. "I promise you, by the end of today, you will have learned something valuable." She was right about that, by the way. Horribly, painfully, humiliatingly right. I just had no idea what kind of education I was about to receive. "Shall we begin with a simple demonstration?" she asked, stretching her arms above her head. I heard something in her shoulders pop, a casual sound that seemed incredibly out of place in a combat facility. "Standard rules. You wear your armor. I will go as I am. First contact wins." First contact, I almost laughed again. My armor could withstand plasma fire. It had deflected projectile weapons, energy blades, and once memorably a small explosive device, and she wanted to face it with nothing but her regulation training uniform. "If you insist," I said, already planning my official complaint about the waste of my time. "Try not to hurt yourself." That smile again. That terrifying, knowing little smile. "Oh, champion," she said softly. "I will be very careful. I should have run. Let me explain something about Kryn culture, so you understand exactly how monumentally I was about to embarrass myself and my entire species. We CRN are not just warriors. We are the warriors. For 6,000 cycles, we have provided the Galactic Council with its finest soldiers, its most decorated champions, its most feared combat specialists. Our children train from the moment they can walk." Our elderly continue sparring until their dying breath. Combat is not what we do, it is what we are. My record was, I will admit, without false modesty, exceptional even by Kryn standards. 17 campaigns across 12 star systems. 347 confirmed victories in single combat. I had trained under Weapons Master Krelzak, who once held off an entire battalion with nothing but a broken pike, and according to legend, sheer spiked, I had earned the Crimson Talon, an honor given to less than 1% of Kryn warriors. I had fought in zero gravity, high gravity, toxic atmospheres, and once unforgettably in the middle of a methane storm on Riel Sea. I was in every measurable way a perfect killing machine wrapped in scales and arrogance. And then there was Lieutenant Iris Calloway, human, age 28 standard years, which meant absolutely nothing to me at the time because I had no reference for human lifespans. She had joined the Galactic Defense Forces immediately after her species made first contact, rising through the ranks with what the other instructors called disturbing speed. Her official record listed her as a close quarters combat specialist with expertise in something called mixed martial arts. Whatever that meant, she looked, and I cannot stress this enough, completely harmless, soft skin, no natural armor plating, no claws, no fangs worth mentioning, no venomous capabilities. She had these thin limbs that looked like they would snap if you breathed on them wrong. Her species averaged around 150 lb, maybe 170 for the larger males. By comparison, I weighed 412 pounds of muscle bone and batley-hardened aggression. The other species on the station had mixed feelings about the human instructors. The V-Pill, with their 6 arms and compound eyes, found them curious, but unthreatening. The Horians' massive bear-like beings from a heavy gravity world thought the humans were adorable in a pathetic sort of way. The Skelleg insectoid hivemind creatures simply did not understand why the Council kept assigning humans to combat positions when they clearly belonged in administrative roles. But there were rumors, quiet whispers in the station's cantina late at night when the stimulants were flowing freely. Stories about human training exercises gone wrong or perhaps gone very right depending on your perspective. About sparring sessions that ended with medical emergencies. About a Targuin shock trooper who had challenged a human instructor to a strength test and ended up with a broken arm. 3 broken arms actually, because Targuins have 4 and the human apparently got tired before finishing the job. I dismissed these stories as exaggeration, the kind of tall tales that always circulate in military facilities. Surely the Council would not put such fragile creatures in instructor positions unless it was some kind of diversity initiative, some political gesture to make the newcomers feel included. Looking back, the signs were all there. I just refused to see them. Pride, as they say, across a dozen different cultures comes before the fall. I was about to fall very, very hard. The preparation area smelled like ozone and metal polish. Familiar scents that usually calmed my pre-combat nerves. Not that I was nervous, mind you. How could I be nervous about facing something that looked like it might blow away in a stiff breeze? But still, protocol was protocol. And I began the ritual of donning my armor with the practiced efficiency of someone who had done this thousands of times. My battle armor was a masterpiece of crane engineering. 3rd-generation combat plating with redundant shield matrices built into every major piece. The chest plate alone could withstand direct hits from plasma rifles at close range. The gauntlets were reinforced with titanium carbide alloys rated for punching through starship holes if necessary. The helmet featured a heads-up display threat assessment algorithms and enough sensor equipment to track a mosquito in a hurricane. Assuming I knew what a mosquito was back then. That is quite the setup, Iris commented, leaning against the wall with her arms crossed. She had not changed, had not geared up, had not even bothered to put on the standard issue protective padding we used for low-risk training exercises. She was wearing the same simple gray uniform she had walked in with soft fabric that would stop absolutely nothing. Military-grade top of the line, I confirmed, snapping the chest plate into place. The armor hummed as it powered up, running its diagnostic checks, all systems green, rated for artillery impacts up to 40 kilotons, energy dispersion fields, kinetic dampeners, full environmental sealing. This armor has kept me alive through situations that would liquefy most species. Impressive, she said, and I could not tell if she was being sincere or sarcastic. With humans, I would learn. It was often both simultaneously. Must be expensive. 300,000 credits standard galactic currency, I said, allowing myself a moment of pride. Custom fitted to my physiology. The waiting list for CRN armors is 7 cycles long. Wow, Iris replied, pushing off from the wall and walking onto the training mat. Be a shame if something happened to it. The way she said it, so casual, so light, so completely unconcerned, should have been my second warning, but I was too busy enjoying the audience that had gathered. Word had spread quickly through the station that someone was about to challenge the human instructor, and apparently this was considered entertainment. The Veil technician, Kilmara, had brought scanning equipment, her multiple eyes gleaming with scientific curiosity. The 2 Horians, brothers named Grum and Folk, were taking bets with a group of off-duty security personnel. Even a couple of Skellig had skittered in, their antennae twitching with interest. The training facility, usually half empty during evening rotations, was now packed with spectators. 50 credit says the human does not land a single hit. Grom rumbled, his massive paw gesturing toward Iris. 100 says the Kren ends this in under 30 seconds. A viral pilot countered, I will take that bet. TH said, his translator rendering his growl into standard. The human has that look. What look? Grom asked. The look that says she knows something we do not. I activated my armor's external speakers, my voice amplified and distorted into something appropriately intimidating. Are we doing this, Lieutenant? Or are you going to stand there all day? Iris rolled her shoulders again, then her neck. Those unsettling popping sounds continuing. She was smiling. Actually smiling like this was the most fun she had all week. Just making sure you are ready, champion. I would hate for you to claim you were not properly prepared. I have been ready since I walked in here. I shot back, settling into a standard crane combat stance. Weight distributed, armor locked and loaded, sensors tracking every minute movement she made. Okay then, she said, her voice bright and cheerful like someone about to start a friendly game rather than a combat demonstration. Standard rules. First contact wins. You can come at me whenever you like, or I can come to you. Your choice. The arrogance of it, the sheer breathtaking arrogance. She was giving me the first move like a master swordsman offering a handicap to a child. I will come to you, I said, my pride singing in my veins. And Lieutenant, you might want to reconsider the no armor situation. I would hate to send you to the medical bay on our first day. That smile widened just a fraction. How considerate. Do not worry about me, champion. I heal fast. I should have asked what she meant by that. I should have wondered why healing speed was relevant to a first contact exercise. I should have done a lot of things. Instead, I charged. I have replayed that moment in my mind approximately 8,000 times since it happened, and I still cannot fully process what my eyes recorded. My armor's internal sensors captured everything at 60 frames per second. High definition, multiple angles, full biometric data streaming in real time. I have the footage. I have watched it frame by frame. It does not help. I charged at her with what I considered appropriate force for a training exercise. Roughly 60% of my full combat speed. Fast enough to seem impressive. Slow enough to avoid actually hurting the fragile human. My armor's kinetic sensors registered my approach. Calculated impact vectors. Prepared the dampening fields for whatever pathetic counter-strike she might attempt. Iris did not move like a fighter preparing for impact. She moved like someone casually stepping aside to avoid a puddle on the sidewalk. Minimal effort, maximum efficiency, no wasted energy whatsoever. Her right hand came up. Not in a punch, not in a strike, just rose into the air with her palm open, fingers relaxed. My sensors tagged the movement as non-threatening, insufficient velocity for damage, insufficient mass for impact, threat level assessed at 0.03%, which my armor classified as negligible, possibly accidental contact. I was 3 FT away when her palm met my chest plate. Not slammed into it, not crashed against it, just touched it. The contact pressure registered at approximately 12 lb per square in, which in combat terms is basically nothing. You could drop a book on a table with more force. A child could high-five someone harder. Then my chest plate exploded. Not metaphorically, not figuratively, literally exploded. 300,000 credits worth of Militärire Kren battle armor rated for artillery strikes detonated outward in a shower of sparking fragments and twisted metal. The kinetic dampeners overloaded instantly. Their safety systems screaming warnings that nobody could hear over the sound of shattering composite materials. My internal sensors went haywire, flashing error messages I had never seen before, some of them displaying in colors that I did not think the Kren language even had words for. The shock wave traveled through the armor plating like a crack racing across ice. My shoulder guards buckled, seen splitting with sounds like gunshots. My gauntlets sparked and died. Their power cores somehow burned out despite having redundant safety systems specifically designed to prevent that. The helmet's heads-up display flickered, died, came back showing static, then died again permanently. I staggered backward. Or rather, my body staggered backward while my brain tried desperately to understand what had just happened. Pieces of armor clattered to the mat around me. Expensive debris from what seconds ago had been cutting-edge military technology. Smoke rose from the chest cavity. Actual smoke, and somewhere deep in the ruined plating. Something was making a high-pitched whining sound like a dying animal. The training facility had gone completely silent. Not quiet. Silent. The kind of silence that happens when an entire room full of different species simultaneously forgets how to breathe. Iris lowered her hand, examining her palm with mild interest, like she was checking to see if she had gotten dirt on it. "Oh," she said, her voice cutting through the silence like a scalpel. "Sorry about that. Sometimes I forget to pull my punches. Well, my taps, I guess, her taps, her taps." She had just obliterated military-grade armor with what she considered a tap. "That is," Kilnara whispered her translator, barely functioning through what I assumed was shock. "That is not possible. The energy transfer alone should have shattered every bone in her arm. The kinetic feedback should have liquefied her shoulder joint. The physics, the math, none of this makes sense." Grum had stopped mid-gesture, his paw frozen in the air, his mouth hanging open in a way that would have been comical under different circumstances. TH was making a sound I had never heard a Horian make before, somewhere between a whimper and religious awe. I looked down at my chest. I could see my scales through the hole in the armor, could see my uniform underneath completely intact. She had destroyed the armor without touching me. The precision required for that was the control necessary to I could not even finish the thoughts. Iris tilted her head, studying me with those calm brown eyes. So she said pleasantly, "Do you want to continue or should we call it here? I will understand if you need a moment to process. My brain was not processing. My brain had stopped processing the moment 300,000 credits exploded off my torso. "How?" I managed to croak out. My voice synthesizer damaged but functional. "How did you?" She smiled again. That terrifying smile. "Champion Vextorther, let me tell you about a little planet called Earth and why we do not recommend underestimating its natives." The next 2 hours turned into what I can only describe as organized chaos with a site of existential crisis. Station engineers swarmed the training mat like scavengers on a fresh carcass, scanning, measuring, cataloging every piece of my destroyed armor with an intensity that bordered on religious fervor. Chief Engineer Vaughn, a Horthian with 40 cycles of experience and exactly 0 patience for impossible things, kept running his scanner over the chest plate fragments and swearing in 3 different languages. "This is wrong," he muttered for the 15th time. His massive fingers surprisingly delicate as they manipulated the scanning equipment. The metal fatigue patterns are wrong. The energy dispersion is wrong. The fracture points are all wrong. This armor did not fail. It was not breached. It just stopped being armor. Elaborate, Kilnara demanded, all 6 of her arms working simultaneously on different pieces of equipment. The Vipro biologist had transformed from casual observer to frantic scientist in approximately 30 seconds, and she had not stopped moving since. Her compound eyes were dilated so wide I could see my reflection in them, multiplied 1,000 times, each one looking equally confused. The molecular bonds were separated at a quantum level, Bourne explained, though he sounded like he did not believe his own words. Not broken, not shattered, separated, like something reached into the atomic structure and just politely asked the atoms to stop holding hands. The energy required to do that across this much surface area would be, he paused, calculating approximately equivalent to a tactical nuclear device, focused into a 12 lb per square in tap. The silence that followed that statement was profound and deeply uncomfortable. "Show me the contact point analysis again," Kilnara said, her translator rendering her clicks and whistles into clipped standard. Vor pulled up a holographic display, and we all watched as the armor's final moments played out in excruciating slow motion. Iris's hand approaching, the contact, the catastrophic failure propagating outward in a perfect sphere of destruction. There, Kilnara zoomed in on Iris's hand, enhancing the image until we could see individual skin cells. Look at the epidermal compression. It barely registered. Her skin did not even bruise. The kinetic feedback that should have shattered human bone structure. Assuming human bones break at similar pressures to other carbon-based species simply did not occur. Maybe human bones do not break at similar pressures, suggested TH, who had been quietly observing from the corner. Maybe we have been making assumptions based on insufficient data. Kilnar's antenna perked up. Get me every piece of biological data we have on humans. Medical records, physical assessments, gravity specifications for their home world. Everything I wanted 5 minutes ago. What happened next was educational in the most horrifying way possible. As the data flooded in, processed by Kilner's team with increasing alarm, a picture began to emerge. A terrible, fascinating, absolutely ridiculous picture. Their bone density, Calera said slowly, staring at her display like it had personally insulted her, is approximately 3 times denser than Kren bones, 4 times denser than V-pill, 6 times denser than the galactic average. That cannot be right, I protested weakly, still sitting on the bench where the medics had insisted I rest. They are so small, so soft-looking. Oh, it gets better, Kilnara continued, her voice climbing into registers that her translator struggled to render. Their muscle fiber density is absurd. Each fiber can exert approximately 5 times the force we predicted based on their size and the arrangement. The way their muscles layer and interact. It is like someone took a normal biological system and optimized it for violence. What is their home world's gravity? Vaughn asked, though his tone suggested he already suspected the answer would upset him. Kilnara pulled up the data. Earth gravity rating 9.8 ms squared. That is, she paused, calculating that is 98 galactic standard. Wait, no, that cannot be. That would make it. Her translator emitted a sound like a strangled gasp. That would make it a stage 4 Deathworld. The temperature in the room seemed to drop about 20 degrees. Everyone knew about Deathworlds. They were the planets that responsible species avoided. The ones marked in red on navigation charts with warnings about toxic atmospheres, lethal fauna, or gravitational fields that would crush most species flat. They were not places where intelligent life evolved. They were places where intelligent life went to die. Impossible, I said, but my voice cracked on the word. The Council would not allow a death world species into civilized space. The risk, the danger. The regulations are based on atmospheric composition and radiation levels. Kilnar interrupted reading directly from the classification database. Gravity is listed as a secondary concern. Earth passed atmospheric and radiation requirements with comfortable margins. Nobody thought to be concerned about gravity that was only slightly below galactic standard. Nobody realized that slightly below was still, from their perspective, completely insane. Bourne was scrolling through additional data, now his expression growing more disturbed by the second. Their planet is covered in continent-spanning storm systems. Their oceans have waves that can destroy ships. They have weather patterns that can level cities. They have predators that hunt in packs, ambush from undergrowth, strike from the air. Their planet is actively trying to kill them, and they evolved by just getting tougher. Look at this. Kilnara pulled up a comparison chart showing human evolution alongside other species. Most species develop technology to overcome environmental challenges. Humans did that too, but they also physically adapted. They have redundant organ system. Their immune systems fight off infections that would kill most of us. They can survive temperature ranges that span over 100 degrees. They have a stress response that temporarily increases their strength and pain tolerance, which why would you need that unless your environment was constantly trying to murder you? They heal faster than almost any species on record. A medical technician added, reviewing the reports. Broken bones mend in weeks, lacerations seal in days. They can lose up to 30% of their blood volume and survive. They have been documented surviving falls from heights that would paste a cream into the ground. I sat there listening to the scientific community systematically dismantle my entire understanding of the universe and felt something fundamental shift in my worldview. So when Iris tapped my armor, I said quietly. She was operating under what she considered gentle contact by human standards, which by our standards was approximately equivalent to being hit by it. I trailed off, unable to finish by a siege weapon finished for me. Yes. And champion, according to the combat logs, she pulled that punch. Sorry, Tap. The muscle tension read out suggests she was operating at less than 10% capacity. Less than 10%. The words echoed in my head like a death nail. I had been destroyed, humiliated. My armor obliterated by less than 10% of what a human considered casual effort. Where is Lieutenant Calloway now? I asked, though I was not sure I wanted to know the answer. Back in the training facility, Kilnara said, checking her comm unit. According to her schedule, she has 3 more training sessions today. Would you like me to cancel your remaining appointments with her? I should have said yes. Every logical, self-preserving instinct I possessed was screaming at me to say yes, to file transfer paperwork, to request reassignment to literally anywhere else in the galaxy. But I was still a warrior, still proud. Even if that pride had just taken a beating that would have killed a lesser species. No, I heard myself say, schedule the rematch. Every single person in that room turned to stare at me like I had just announced my intention to jump into a star without the armor. This time I continued committing fully to what was clearly insanity. If I am going to learn from the best, I need to understand what I am actually facing. Kilnara's translator made a sound I am fairly certain was the virile equivalent of laughing at a funeral. Champion Vexther, with all respect to your courage, are you absolutely sure about that? No, I was not sure. I was not sure about anything anymore, but I was going to do it anyway. Because apparently I had not learned my lesson yet. Word spread through Station Helios 9 faster than a reactor breach alert. By the time I walked back into the training facility, roughly 90 minutes after my armor had been converted into expensive scrap metal, the observation gallery was packed. Not just packed, overflowing. Species I had never seen before had apparently materialized from the station's deepest corners, all crammed together to witness what most of them probably expected to be my funeral. This is a mistake, Grum rumbled beside me, having appointed himself my unofficial advisor/ner. A terrible, stupid, pride-fueled mistake, noted. I replied, stretching my arms and trying to ignore how exposed I felt without my armor. Just scales, muscle, and the growing certainty that I had made a catastrophically poor life choice. The Kryn is courage. I will grant him that, someone muttered in the crowd. Stupid courage, but courage nonetheless. How much do you want to bet he does not make it 10 seconds? Another voice asked. I am not taking that bet. I like keeping my credits. The betting pools I noticed had shifted dramatically. Nobody was wagering on my victory anymore. The bets now centered entirely on how quickly I would be defeated and how much medical intervention I would require afterward. The overrun dare on bone fractures was currently set at 4.5, which seemed both insulting and possibly optimistic. Kilnara had set up an entire sensor array along the training mat's perimeter with enough monitoring equipment to track a supernova for science. She had explained earlier, her eyes gleaming with the particular madness that afflicted researchers who had stumbled onto something genuinely unprecedented. If we are going to watch a Deathworld species demonstrate combat capabilities, we might as well gather useful data. And if I die, I had asked, then the data will be extremely useful for warning other species, she had replied cheerfully. Your sacrifice will save lives, champion, comforting. Truly, Iris entered the training facility at exactly the scheduled time, because apparently humans were punctual, even when about to commit what most species considered justifiable homicide. She looked exactly the same as before. Same gray uniform, same casual posture, same slightly amused expression that I was rapidly learning to associate with impending disaster. Champion Vexther, she said, inclining her head in a gesture that might have been respect or might have been acknowledgement that I was about to become a cautionary tale. I appreciate your dedication to training. Most species ask for transfers after the first session. I am not most species, I replied, settling into a ready stance and trying to project confidence I absolutely did not feel. No, she agreed, walking onto the mat with that same easy grace that had preceded my armor's destruction. No, you are not. The Kryn have an excellent reputation. Fierce, honorable, skilled. I am looking forward to working with you properly, working with me. As if the previous encounter had been some kind of warm-up exercise, rather than a complete demolition of my equipment and ego. Same rules? I asked, my voice steady despite the fact that my survival instincts were staging a full rebellion inside my brain. First contact wins. Iris paused, considering the silence stretched out, and I swear the temperature in the observation gallery dropped as dozens of species held their collective breath. No, she said finally. And I saw Grum physically slump in relief. No, I think for actual training purposes, we should modify the rules. Full sparring session, 3-minute rounds. Contact allowed but controlled. I will match your intensity level. If you tap out or call stop, we stop immediately. Does that work for you? It was more generous than I deserved. More consideration than I had shown her during our first encounter. Professional, measured, appropriate for actual instruction rather than demonstration. I should have accepted gratefully, should have thanked her for her restraint, should have recognized the lifeline she was offering. But I was CR and we are not famous for our wisdom. No holding back, I said, the words leaving my mouth before my brain could stop them. I want to know what humans are actually capable of. No handicaps, no mercy, no pulling your what did you call them? Your taps. The observation gallery erupted in shocked murmurs. Kilnara's equipment started beeping frantically as she adjusted sensors to account for what she clearly expected to be significant kinetic events. Grum made a sound like a landslide experiencing depression. Iris studied me for a long moment, her expression unwritable. Then slowly that smile returned, not the amused one from before, something different, something that looked almost like approval mixed with a healthy dose of concern. Okay, champion, she said softly, rolling her shoulders with those unnerving pops that I now understood were the sounds of a Deathworld species preparing for violence. But remember, you asked for this. She settled into a stance I did not recognize, weight balanced, hands loose at her sides, breathing slow and controlled. The training facility had gone completely silent again. Even the environmental system seemed to have quieted as if the station itself was holding its breath. Somewhere in the observation gallery, someone started praying in a language I did not recognize. I was beginning to think they had the right idea. I lasted 4 seconds. 4 seconds, not 4 minutes, not 4 exchanges, not even 4 meaningful attempts at landing a strike. 4 seconds of actual combat before my entire understanding of the universe collapsed like a neutron star imploding into a black hole. I opened with a standard Kryn sweep-strike combination. A move I had executed successfully thousands of times. A technique that had earned me 3 of my campaign ribbons. My claws extended. My muscles coiled. My centuries of evolutionary predator instinct kicked into high gear. Iris was not there, not dodging, not blocking, just not occupying the space my strike passed through. She had moved before I had even finished the wind-up. Her reflexes operating at speeds that made my combat-trained nervous system look like it was processing information through mud. I pivoted, adapting, going for a low sweep that should have taken out her legs. She stepped over it without looking down, like she had eyes in the back of her head, like she could see in slow motion, like physics had decided to grant her special exemptions from normal causality. Then she moved forward, and I learned what real speed looked like. Her hand touched my shoulder. Not a strike, just contact, and my entire arm went numb. Not pain, just instant nothing. Like someone had unplugged my nervous system. Before I could process that, her other hand tapped my chest. Same gentle pressure as before, and I felt my lungs forget how to work. Not crushed, not damaged, just suddenly very confused about their primary function. I staggered backward, and that was apparently the opening she had been waiting for. She closed the distance faster than my eyes could track, moving in ways that violated every principle of momentum inertia I had ever learned. Her movements were not just fast, they were efficient, every muscle firing in perfect synchronization. No wasted energy, no unnecessary motion, just pure applied violence delivered with surgical precision. A tap to my knee and my leg buckled. A touch to my ribs and something popped that probably should not pop. A brush against my neck, and suddenly I was looking at the ceiling, having apparently been swept off my feet by what my brain insisted had been a light breeze, but what my body understood had been a perfectly executed throw. I hit the mat hard enough to knock the air from my already confused lungs. My vision blurred, refocused, and found Iris standing over me, not even breathing hard, looking down with an expression of professional concern mixed with what might have been sympathy. 4 seconds, she said gently. That is actually pretty good for a first attempt against human combat techniques. The Targosian shock trooper tapped out in 2 seconds. The legendary Targuin feared across 12 systems had lasted 2 seconds, and I had made it to 4. This was supposed to be encouraging. I do not understand. I wheezed my lungs, slowly remembering their job description. Your speed, your strength, the precision. How can anything? I could not finish the sentence. Words had become too complicated. Iris offered me a hand, and I stared at it like it might explode, which given recent events seemed entirely possible. When I did not immediately take it, she crouched down beside me instead, settling onto her heels with casual ease. Earth gravity is 98 standard, she explained, her voice taking on a lecture quality that somehow made this worse. We evolved in it, trained in it. Every human you meet has spent their entire life in what you would consider a high-gravity environment. When we come to stations like this, operating at 7 standard, we are essentially, she paused, searching for the right word. Unweighted, I repeated numbly. Our muscles, our reflexes, our bone structure, everything is calibrated for higher resistance, put us in lower gravity, and suddenly we are faster, stronger, more efficient than our biology was designed to be. Add in a few thousand years of humans, specifically training to hurt other humans, because we are not great at galactic peace, but we are excellent at violence. And you get she gestured at my prone form. This you were not even trying, I said. And it was not a question I was trying not to hurt you, she corrected. That is significantly harder by the way human combat training focuses on ending threats, quickly controlling force output. To spar safely takes way more concentration than just, going full. Intent intensity, full intensity. She had disabled me in 4 seconds while actively restraining herself, and she called back controlled sparring. Something broke inside me then, not physically. The medical scans would later confirm I had miraculously escaped with only bruising and wounded pride, but something psychological, something fundamental to my self-image as a warrior, as a crone who understood combat. Just shadow. I started laughing. Not a happy laugh, not an amused laugh. The kind of laugh that happens when your brain hits a paradox it cannot resolve and decides humor is the only remaining option. I laughed until my ribs hurt, until tears leaked from my eyes, until the observation gallery went from concerned to genuinely worried about my mental stability. "Are you okay?" Iris asked, her concern deepening. "No," I managed between gasps. "No, I am absolutely not okay." I just realized that humans, soft, fragile, adorable humans who have been in the Galactic Council for 3 cycles, are the most dangerous species in known space, and we invited you in because you seemed harmless. More laughter edging into hysteria. We looked at you and thought, oh, how cute. Let us give them combat instructor positions. What is the worst that could happen? To be fair, Iris said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. We are very cute. That part was accurate. That somehow made it worse. They knew exactly how terrifying they were, and they were playing it down, being gentle, holding back because they did not want to scare us. Too late. Way, way too late. "Help me up," I said finally, extending my hand. "Please," she took it, her grip firm but careful, and pulled me to my feet with what I now recognized as deliberately restrained strength. Standing there looking at this small, unarmored, absolutely lethal human instructor, I felt something shift in my perspective. Fear, yes. Respect, absolutely, but also strangely hope. If humans could be this capable, this controlled, this professional despite being walking weapon systems, then maybe having them in the Galactic Council was not the disaster waiting to happen I had assumed. Maybe it was the best thing that had ever happened to us, as long as we never ever made them angry. Same time next week. Iris asked, her tone light. I should have said no. Every instinct screamed no. My bruised ribs voted enthusiastically for no. Yes, I heard myself say, because apparently I had learned nothing. But maybe we start with basic techniques before moving to full sparring. Her smile widened into a grin. Now you are thinking like a proper student. Welcome to training Champion Vexther. This is going to be fun. Fun, right. Her definition of fun and mine were clearly operating in different universes. But as I limped toward the medical bay, followed by Grum's concerned rumbling and Kilnara's excited requests for follow-up biometric data, I found myself actually looking forward to next week. I was going to learn from the best. Even if it killed me, which, given what I now knew about humans, was a significantly more likely outcome than I had previously believed. But at least I would die educated. The report I filed with Kryn High Command 3 days later became the most widely circulated military document in Galactic Council history. I titled it with what I felt was appropriate gravity threat assessment and tactical recommendations regarding human combat capabilities, or why we should all be very, very nice to Earth. The response was immediate and widespread. Within 2 cycles, every major military academy and council space had requested human combat instructors. Within 4 cycles, the Galactic Defense Forces had restructured their entire combat doctrine around what they euphemistically called Deathworld integration protocols. Within 6 cycles, 3 separate species had filed formal protests with the Council, claiming that allowing humans into combat roles constituted an unfair advantage bordering on biological warfare. The Council ruled that humans were technically operating within acceptable parameters of violence, provided they continued to demonstrate the restraint they had shown thus far. The fact that this restraint was the only thing standing between galactic civilization and what amounted to an army of physics-defying combat monsters was left diplomatically unmentioned. I continued my training with Lieutenant Iris Calloway. Survived it, too, though some days that felt more like luck than skill. She was, I grudgingly admitted after my 6th session and 4th medical bay visit. An excellent instructor, patient, thorough, knowledgeable, and only occasionally terrifying enough to make me question my life choices. Other humans gradually integrated into station life, and we all learned to adapt. We learned not to challenge them to strength competitions, not to question their stamina, and absolutely not to suggest that their physical capabilities were exaggerated. We learned that their apparent fragility was the universe's most effective camouflage, that their smiles could mean anything from friendliness to impending violence, and that their concept of a gentle touch required significant recalibration of our expectations. Most importantly, we learned to be grateful that humans, despite being essentially biological weapons wrapped in soft packaging, were genuinely interested in peace. They could have demanded positions of power, could have leveraged their physical superiority into political dominance, could have become the tyrants that any sensible species would become with those capabilities. Instead, they became instructors, medics, engineers, diplomats. They used their strength to help, their speed to assist, their endurance to support. They integrated into galactic society, not as conquerors, but as colleagues, which, when you think about it, might be the most terrifying thing about them. They are this dangerous, this capable, this overwhelmingly superior in combat, and they choose kindness. Either humans are the most enlightened species in the galaxy, or they are playing a very, very long game. I am still not sure which possibility scares me more. But I do know one thing with absolute certainty after 3 months of training, 17 medical bay visits, and 1 completely destroyed set of armor. If you ever find yourself on a station with a human combat instructor, and they offer to demonstrate proper technique with just a gentle tap, run fast, run far, and do not look back. And whatever you do, for the love of all that is holy in this galaxy, do not ask them to stop holding back. Trust me on this one. I am speaking from experience. Now, if you will excuse me, I have another training session in 20 minutes and I need to update my will.